Okay, central Queensland. Do you notice how dry it is? Right. Here's John Mackay just about to hike up to that cliff behind. So if you're wondering why I am moderately well in my middle to old age, being 75, this is one reason. I do a lot of hiking and climbing and things like that, starting to get less and less. Here we are up at the cliff. How good are your eyes? You see, if you ask God to open your eyes to see what's actually there, that's a prayer that I'll guarantee he'll hear and do and act on. Can you see the rocks? Let's take it up closer. Notice these rocks are rounded and there's lots of them at all sizes. These are river deposited or flood deposited. They have been tumbled. They're tougher than the surrounding sand, so they've survived. But how good are your eyes? Can you see the rock trees? Yes, this is what we were looking for. We followed this bed for some 30 to 40 kilometers. So not just climbing cliffs, but lots of walking, lots of recording. And you're only seeing a tiny fraction of the slides that we have. I was asking the other day one of our volunteers, could they continue helping me with the slide classification? Yes, we still have slides, tens of thousands of them from all this research. And we've only picked the eyeballs. That's a fossil tree. Okay, so we have a bed, a cliff, we have trees turned to stone, we have rocks washed in water. But you don't know how big these trees are. They're easy to identify. Most of them are pine trees. But let's get up on top of the cliff. You see Australia in the dry? That, by the way, is our winter time. Eat your heart out, England. It may get a little bit of frosty sometime, but it's warm much of the year and it's dry. You can see how dry it is? Well, Eric is touching the branch of a tree. Let's take you back a little further. I took some of my kids when they were younger out to see this. You see my youngest daughter there, where the branch joins the trunk? Another one of my kids further back. You see Mr. Eric way back in the yellow t-shirt? He is where that tree is still going. If we had a helicopter, or in those days, if we had a drone, we could have taken some pictures. Wasn't possible in those days. This tree, no, we didn't discover it. It was discovered by an oil drilling rig. And, it turned out to be some 30 meters around. It was several hundred feet, 110 meters from the base to the first branch. Discovered by the oil drilling rig, they were amazed. And it was wonderful to gain access to this property. And no, we won't tell you where it is, because that's the one thing the owner asked us to not do. It took us 10 years to track down even the location. Fortunately, it's not the only giant tree that's been found. Here's another one. Oh no, that's not the tree, that's the branch. Here we are out at the Winton Museum site. Look at that branch. That's a decent sized branch. That's the only part of this tree they've actually been able to excavate. The rest of it is standing up in the rocks. What are we looking at? Well, it says here, 100 million year old conifer tree branch. Now, these are the trees that we dig up at Jurassic Ark, and this is just the branch. Now, if you want to know how big the tree trunk is and why they didn't get it out, the branch was hard enough. Let's give you some scale. There's me, roughly. I'm taller than that, but because we were giving this presentation first in America, we put a man in at 6 feet. Now, to give you an example, I'd flown to the USA in a big jumbo jet. There's the man at the front. There's the plane behind him, 250 feet. And in fact, if you get an idea of that, now let's put the tree in. Now that's a tree, right? That's how big trees used to be in Australia at a time when the climate was far better. But this tree is whole. It's not like the broken pieces that you find in the marsupials that are in the next deposit up. And yet it's one reason why the scientists have become convinced there used to be giant tree climbing kangaroos. Yes, we do have tree climbing kangaroos even today, but they're tiny fellas. The reason they can climb trees today is they're tiny because the trees are tiny. You see, they can actually climb. We have them, Joe. You'd love to see some of these in our museums, and they even walk out on the tiny branches. Now, if you can imagine one of these being 3 meters in size, 2 meters in size, weighing several hundred kilos, walking along that branch. If you had it in a giant tree, then all of a sudden you'd hear crack, then you'd hear ah, and splot. Then you wouldn't have any more giant tree kangaroos, only the little ones. And again, the theme from the fossil trees in the flood deposits and the animals we find in the next deposits is that in the beginning, even everything, including the trees, were very good. They were impressive. The trees that were there when Adam was first there were absolutely magnificent, both in their size and in their provision of food for Adam. Everything that God made was very good. Can I encourage you, as we said, our theme was have the mind that was in Christ. He was there. He's the way, the truth, and the life. He tells you that. Can you start there? Put that in your head and begin to see what Charles Darwin did was the opposite. He assumed that everything then and now were the same. If there was death now, there was death then. If there was genetic defects now, not that he knew anything about genetics, it always was. If there was kill and be killed, it always was. And God said no. Everything was very good.